guys, last week I referenced a movie that not everybody knew, but I bet you've all seen this next movie. Anyone not seen Annie? Movie Annie? What? But seriously, you guys need to have movie night. Diana hasn't seen it either?
I've seen the whole thing.
What? You guys are missing. That is a classic.
Yeah, we do no choice.
Okay.
Actually didn't watch it because he watched all of it.
No, I never watched it.
Never watched any of them. It's the same story. Could be the animated version. It could be the live action version. In high school, I was Lily, who is Miss Hannigan's brother's girlfriend. Miss Hannigan owns the orphanage. It was her brother had a girlfriend who pretended to be Annie's parents. That was my role in high school. So anyways, so for those of you who have not seen it, I don't even know how this is possible. In the story, Annie, she's an orphan, right? She lives in an orphanage. She's a rascal. You know, she's like Red. She is like running the orphanage. Like she gets the kids and they dance and sing and rebel and do little tricks and stuff. And this rich guy, Daddy Warbucks, comes along. You know, I think it's Christmas. He decides he's going to have an orphan. I don't know if it's for dinner or the weekend, but he's going to have this orphan just, give an orphan a day out. And he's this kabillionaire. And so he invites Annie, and he falls in love with her because she's very endearing. And he decides he wants to adopt her. But she has always wanted to know her parents. She believes her parents are coming back for her. So he's like, well, I don't want to adopt you, and then you never get to meet your parents. So he puts out a campaign that says, hey, anybody, if you are Annie's parent, if you left a child at an orphanage, XYZ date, come, if you can prove that you were her parents, I'll give you whatever amount of money, $10,000 or something. Well, this is during the Depression. This happens in the 30s. And so thousands of people show up because they're all Annie's parents. This is where Lily comes in because Miss Hannigan, who owns the orphanage, runs the orphanage, she's a mean woman. Her brother, she convinces her brother and his girlfriend to be Annie's parents to get Annie to get the money, and then they're all going to live on Easy Street, the song Easy Street, afterwards. And I think they plan on just killing Annie and just keeping the money. And Miss Hannigan had a box of stuff that was left with Annie, so she gives it to the brother so that he can be like, look, and I have this locket. Like, she knows the things that would be proof. And so they get custody, and Annie realizes they're not. And Daddy Warbucks ends up saving her, and they ride off into the sunset singing, tomorrow, tomorrow, I love you, tomorrow. And it's happy, and Annie gets adopted. So Annie gets to realize the dream of every orphan. Not only does she get adopted, but she gets adopted by like the richest man in the world. And that makes me think about what I wanted to talk about today is adoption. And the thing that I think is really interesting about adoption, those of you who have had your own children, you can't give them back. Like if you get a lemon, you're just stuck with it. I'm not saying any of your children are lemons. I'm just saying that if you get one that isn't the best, but you're stuck with them. You're stuck with whatever kids you give birth to. But with an adopted kid, you go meet that kid. I believe there's a period where you kind of get to know that child, and if you don't get along, you can give them back. That's my understanding of how that works. I don't know if that's true, but in American adoptions, I think there's a grace period where both can like try it out, and at the end they can be like, no, this isn't going to work. And so to adopt somebody, to me, almost seems like you love them almost more. You're like, I see your flaws, and I still want you. Your kids, you're like, I see your flaws, and sometimes I'm like, people joke like, you want to take them home? I'm sure many of us who are parents, many of you who are parents, because I'm not, have said to somebody, you want to take them home? You can have them. When you're like, with your child. But with an adopted child, you're choosing to take that kid, flaws and all. There is a family, they're at Crossroads. And I was always just blown away by them. They intentionally adopt, and they've adopted like 8 kids or something crazy, with serious mental and physical disabilities. Like wheelchair kids, kids are gonna be in a wheelchair forever. There was one story where there was a child who had been given up by the parent. It was a baby. And they didn't think this baby was gonna live more than a month or 2. And what is wrong with my hand? And they would be in the hospital the whole time. And so this couple chose to adopt, to take care of this child who they would only know for maybe a month, who would never come home, according to the doctors. And if a child dies on your watch, there's like an inquest. So they went into this situation knowing we're gonna love this child and it's probably gonna die. We're never gonna get to bring it home, and then we're gonna have an inquest and have to have our lives examined. And yet they still adopted this child. And I think like those people, if there's like a get out of hell free pass, those people are gonna get one. Because they did, and the child ended up living and coming home. Like the Lord worked in that situation. The child lived, and the child was not like perfectly healthy come home, but the child lived and came home. And so I just think that is amazing. How many of you tease your siblings and told them they were adopted? I actually never did this. It would not have worked. My brother looks just like my dad. Like, there is no question that Chris is Randy's son. Who knows that I'm adopted? Who knows that you're adopted? You are all adopted. It's a trick question. We're all adopted. I'm not actually. Like, biologically, I'm not. I look just like my parents. We are all adopted. We are all adopted into the kingdom. Those of us, when you say yes to Christ, when you were baptized and you say yes to Christ, you are adopted into the kingdom. You are his beloved child from that point on. Even if you get baptized and then fall off the wagon and start to live this crazy life, and no matter what crazy life you lived beforehand, you could be the worst person who's done the worst crime ever, and still if you come to Christ, he will say, yes, come be a part of my family. There's no trial period where you've got to prove yourself or earn off your bad merits. You are in. And I love that. And not only that, but so God the Creator, Jesus is the King of all things. So if I am adopted into the family with Christ, that means we're royalty. We are all spiritual royalty. So I want you to picture yourself wearing, in the movies, that it's red or purple, cape with the white, Dalmatian looking fur on the edge and the tiara and our scepter, right? We are all, wherever we go, wearing our royal robe and our tiara and our scepter. Well, I guess, is it a tiara for dudes? I guess it's just a crown. Dudes might look funny wearing a tiara. Okay, but we wear that wherever we go. And here's my proof in the Bible that what I say is true. In Matthew 25, it says, "Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world.'" All of us are blessed and have an inheritance in heaven. I don't know how this is going to work. Are there going to be a billion thrones all over heaven? If we are all ruling in heaven, I don't know who we rule. I don't know how that works. I don't know who there is to boss around if all of us are kings and queens, but somehow that's how it's going to happen. And then it says in Matthew 5, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." That means it's your inheritance. It is yours. You have authority there. It is your home. And then finally in Galatians 7, it says, "Blessed..." Oh, that's not what Galatians 7 says. Hold on. I put the wrong one in there. "So you are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then you are an heir of God." We are all heirs to the kingdom. Every single one of us. Princes and princesses who will inherit the kingdom of heaven. And so that's pretty cool. And I have a few points to make on that. The first one is some of us don't feel that way. Some of us do not feel like royalty. We feel like the street urchin instead. Some of us feel like the dirty, miserable, worthless scrap on the bottom of someone's shoe. That you don't deserve to be able to walk into the throne room. But God doesn't make junk. God made you to be beautiful and holy. He loves you. Absolutely. You are not worthless. You are worth all the treasure in heaven. You are worth the Son of the Lord dying. You are beautiful. No one is ugly. You are all beautiful. I don't care if you got the biggest mole on your nose. Like, you are beautiful. You are handcrafted by the Master Creator. And to say about yourself or anyone else that you're ugly is to stand next to Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel and be like, well, it's just kind of like a bunch of stick figures. Okay? You are worth all the treasure in heaven. You are that worthwhile. You are beautiful and gorgeous to God the Father. He absolutely loves you, just the way you are, even when you're a hot mess. He absolutely loves you and wants to adopt you and wants to bring you home, even if you're a rascal. He still loves you. And that's awesome. That makes I'm like, yeah. And that can be really hard to believe, especially if for whatever reason in your life people have put you down and told you you're not. That can be really difficult. I think about some of my students, and this, I don't understand this, and maybe when someday when you get to this point as a parent, there are parents at school of kids that I have taught who's like, I'm done. You're such a pain in my butt, get out. You're 16, I don't care where you live or where you go, but you're not living in my house anymore. And they just kick their kids out and don't care where they go. And I cannot fathom that. But the Lord would never do that to you.
At 16?
Yeah.
Is that even legal?
I don't know, but they do it. And these kids have to go live with a friend. And that just, and some parents and human parents have left their kids for drugs, or they get married and now that kid's like, you know, or they die and these kids are scarred because they're left behind with nobody. And so that can cause a lot of scars, but we are all adopted. No matter what happens there, we are still adopted and loved by the Father, and we are beautiful to Him. And I imagine those kids who are rejected by their parents grow up thinking they're worthless. And that's got to be very difficult. So if any of you have grown up thinking that you are worthless, that's a big fat lie. You are all absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. You are absolutely loved no matter how you act. And so that's great news. Now here's the part that then we're like, yes, I'm beautiful. When you can finally accept that, you're like, I'm beautiful. Here's the kicker. So is everybody else. So that neighbor that you want to move because they're driving you crazy because they're loud and they don't pull their weeds and they're like, I don't know, like rev their engines all night long or whatever, that you're like, ugh. That person is also a beloved child of the Most High God. Even if they haven't accepted Him, He wants them to come home. That boss or that coworker that you're like, oh my, like I have students, when they're not there at school, I'm like, thank you, Jesus, that kid's not here. Because, I mean, there are kids who like, like we have those coworkers that drive us insane. They are God's beloved children. That politician that you're like, ugh, I did not vote for that guy. I don't know what idiot voted for that guy. That person's a jerk. I can't stand that person. They need to, like, they are obviously the spawn of Satan. No, they're not the spawn of Satan. They are the spawn of the Most High God. Whether they have accepted Him or not and are following His directives or not, they are still His beloved child. And so when we're sitting here trashing them, God's going to get all mama bear. You know, when you're sitting there trashing one of His kids, it's going to be very difficult for Him to sit back and let you do that and not get mad about it. Right? And I'm sure it happens even with siblings. I'm sure Rhett and Colin go around like, he's such a jerk and I can't stand him. And that is difficult. And then, but you're like, stop telling your brother he's worthless. And you're trying to comfort the one who's crying. Like, and that's what God is constantly he doing? He's trying to comfort the one who's being blasted on social media, whose character is being defamed by his own other children, and he wants to come with his own children and be like, stop it. That's your brother. That politician you hate, that's your brother. That neighbor who's super annoying, that's your sister in Christ. That coworker who never comes up to work on time and always leaves their work for you, and now you have to work extra because they don't do their job, that's your brother or sister. That person who's spreading rumors about you, that's your brother or sister. Okay, and that can sometimes be a hard pill to swallow when we're getting mad at somebody. So that's kind of the first part of us being kingdom royalty. We need to remember that we are beautiful and that every other human is made in God's image, whether they are portraying God's image in that moment or not. And the other part of that is we are ambassadors of the kingdom. Those of us who have said yes to Christ, we are ambassadors. We are wearing that cape and carrying our scepter wherever we go. I was at the pool a couple weeks ago in my bathing suit, and someone walks up and they're like, "You're the pastor of Bromley Christian Church, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Oh, I am." And I was like, shoot, even at the pool, people know that I represent this place. When I'm walking down the street, people know that I represent this place. So if the people you have a relationship with, they get to know that you're like, I went to church Sunday, or my church is having this event on this weekend. They know you're Christian people. So if you're going around blasting people on social media, if you're going around spreading rumors about someone, if you're going around saying, I wish that person would stop working here, I can't stand them. If you're going around the neighborhood being like, don't you wish they would move? I wish they would move. You are representing the kingdom in that moment. And you're representing Christ in that moment. And are you representing him well? We've all had this. We've all had politicians that we think are great, and we're like, yes, they represent America. Right? Then we have those politicians, we're like, ugh, I did not vote for that person. And I think about, sometimes, that person's going to go to the United Nations, to the NATO conference, and wear their, flag, and everyone's going to know that that's our president, and I'm sorry, France, I didn't vote for that person. I have traveled internationally and been like, please don't ask me about the president because I didn't vote for him because I think he's a jerk. We've all had that because he is representing the United States of America, and if we don't think he's a good ambassador of America, then we become embarrassed. Same thing happens with us as Christians. Wherever we go, we're wearing our cape and our scepter and our crown of the kingdom. So if we are misbehaving, we are representing the kingdom to people who might not know better. And now they're thinking, oh man, those Christians are a bunch of jerks. Oh, that person's a Christian, but man, they are always gossiping and running their mouth about somebody. That's the image, that's the idea that we give out about Christ, and I don't want to represent Christ that way. I say to my cheerleaders all the time, I'm like, look, whether you like it or not, wherever you go in Ludlow, people know you're a Ludlow cheerleader. They'll be at the store, and they'll be walking down the aisle, and someone's like, Mommy, there's a cheerleader. Because they just know. Even if they're not wearing their Ludlow cheer gear, people in town know who the cheerleaders are. And so I tell them, whatever you do reflects on us. So if one of my girls gets drunk and gets in an accident and hurts somebody, you know what the headline's going to read? Ludlow cheerleader kills family of 4 in a drunk driving accident. Great, now that makes us look like all of us are a bunch of drunks. And so we have to have that conversation all the time, you can't be going and getting in fights all the time. You can't be going around town, with your doobie in your hand. You can't do that kind of stuff. You can't be I always say, you can't be making out with your boyfriend in the back of the funeral home. You can't be doing that stuff because everybody, that's a true thing. All these things have happened, people. You can't be doing that stuff because it represents all of us. So now everyone thinks that the cheerleaders are a bunch of, fight starters and pot smokers. My brother will not let my nieces try out for cheerleading because at his school, the cheerleaders are Mean Girls, like the TV show Mean Girls, the movie.
Bring it on.
Yeah, they're like the preppy, don't talk to me, like snooty, like, and so he will not let my nieces be cheerleaders. He won't, because he doesn't want them to be like that. And that breaks my heart that that's his image of what a cheerleader is, because I would hope, at our school, our cheerleaders aren't like that. And my cheerleaders, we constantly talk about being inclusive. So we as Christians need to remember that wherever we go, we are wearing our robe. We are representing the kingdom in every interaction we have. Every interaction on Facebook, every interaction as you're talking to your neighbors, every interaction at work, every interaction with your family, every interaction with your kids. You are representing the kingdom. And so my question to you is, are you always representing the kingdom correctly? Are you representing the kingdom well? And all God's people said, amen. We are going to stand up. During the song, if any of you have not surrendered yourself to Christ, you can come on up. And at the end of service, if anyone needs prayer, if you want to come up, at the end of service, if anyone wants to come and pray over a knee, that would be great, because I think it'll go away with a little help. But if anyone wants to come down during the altar call, you can.